Welcome back, everyone, to Aspire to Lead. I'm so glad you're with us this week. Before we jump into the conversation with the wonderful James O'Neill, I want to share about an exciting event that's coming up. I'm going to be a part of the South Carolina Schools to Watch Networking and Sharing Conference on July 16th of this year in South Carolina. And this is part of the SCMLE organization. And they're going to be bringing me in to do not only a keynote, but a breakout session on the language of behavior, where we're going to be exploring practical ways that educators can understand student behavior and respond with confidence and compassion. So this event is actually very unique. It's going to be free for the first 200 folks that register. So if you're planning to attend, be sure to register soon, and I'll make sure that the link is in the show notes for you. So that way you have the wonderful opportunity to be there and to connect with everyone that's a part of this wonderful association. Now, for today's conversation, I'm going to be joined by James O'Neill Jr., who's a passionate educator, speaker, and founder of Mastery for All LLC. I met him over at the NCMLE conference. I didn't have an opportunity to have him a part of the bonus episode, so I invited him here to have a full conversation about how he supports K through 12 math education. He does a ton of professional development, coaching, consulting, and has been a classroom teacher for over 15 years. So this is a powerful conversation about purpose, mastery, and the belief that who can truly does mean all. So let's jump in. Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. All right, we are back. Aspire to Lead listeners, I am excited because this gentleman, I know we've been doing some bonus episodes, NCMLE bonus episodes, but I didn't get a chance to have James O'Neill Jr. sit down with me at the event. So I asked him to be on the show because this guy is brilliant. He talks so passionately and has just a wonderful perspective, and I can't wait to dive in with him. So James, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Yeah, excited to be here, Josh. I appreciate you and the invitation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we got to sit next to each other before the event even occurred, and I got to learn more about what you do, and I was so excited to, get you onto the podcast. So with that, will you just explain a little bit about what you do in the educational space and some of your educational leadership journey?
Yeah, so former teacher, I taught middle school math and high school math for about 15 and a half years, did that for a while, stepped into the leadership role, department chair, PLC lead, did that for many years before I started my own consulting business called Mastery for All. And Mastery for All is pretty much what I've built out now to transform the instructional practices of teachers and leaders as it relates to math instruction, but also there's a cultural lens as well. And so I do that by making sure that all of our students are supported and really highlighting the brilliance of Black boys as we look at that demographic and their achievement and success in education. Can be predictable. So my job is to continue to shift people's mindsets in order to shift people's practices so we can really get all of our students as Mastery students. So been leading that Mastery for All going on 3 years now. It's my full-time endeavor to really, really support education and to really get joy and mastery back into the classrooms. But we have to, again, support our leaders and our teachers in order to do that.
Okay, so let's dive into the work. So with Mastery for All, what was the construct behind that? Like, what were you seeing in the classroom that was like, you know what, I need to build something out where I can provide this so it's not just in my classroom, but I'm helping others throughout the country?
Yeah. So, I spent a lot of time in the classroom and in the school, and it wasn't really until I started visiting other people's classrooms where I realized that the approaches were just different. How people approached teaching, and specifically of mathematics at the time, and just going in other people's classrooms and just looking at the culture, I realized that my approach and the people that were having success in the classroom and outside of the classroom, their approaches were different because their mindsets were different. So how you approach something is usually based upon how you see something. And if you see, sometimes I saw in the language of kids as the problem, adults as the problem, parents as the problem, and not necessarily I am a solution. If you don't see yourself as being a part of a solution, then you won't endeavor to look for the solution. If you see the education system or the students you serve as the problem and there is no solution, you just are just making it day by day, then that's going to be your lived experience. So when I started to go into classrooms and start to see approaches that were kind of mirrored in people's belief systems and they were getting the results of failure or stuck or stagnation, I realized like I wanted to coach people and help people in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. So based on what you described so far in those previous answers, I want to go a little bit deeper as far as what that looks like on an everyday basis. So, when you're helping students achieve their potential through high expectations and equitable outcomes, like what does that look like in either a math class, because I know that's your specialty, or when you're coaching other people as far as what that looks like in the classroom every single day?
Yeah, so I'll start with students. So teaching mathematics is a special calling. And I say that because there is a underlying belief system that not everybody can do mathematics. So only certain people are math people. Not everybody's a math person, blah, 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 blah. So when you start, if that is the underlying belief, then mathematics mastery is only specialized for a certain group of people. It's not for everyone. So you get people believing that, you get students believing that. And so starting with what that looks like in practice, many students start believing that early because they stop winning in mathematics. Now I get to go into elementary classrooms. And I don't know if I think we all, especially secondary people, need to go back into an elementary room where kids are just like raising their hand. Ooh, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Like the joy and the excitement of trying and even being wrong and being okay being wrong, because this is what I see. This is what I believe. Like when that starts to wane and students stop winning, ultimately they're going to start believing that they're a loser in the subject. And so practically that looks like for a teacher planning out for their students to win. Like in the lesson today, where is the access for all, and where can kids start winning again? Because when kids start winning again, they're going to start changing their mind about whether this is for them and whether this is not for them. And so I usually ask a practical question to teachers when I'm coaching teachers, when I'm coaching leaders: where are the wins? Where in this lesson can a kid win? And where's the next win? Because if it's all about struggle and it's all about like trying and being right all day long, and if a kid never gets a chance to quote unquote be right, then they're going to start to internalize this is not for them.
All right. So I had an opportunity, because we got to spend a lot of time together, James, of seeing you on the stage. We all had to give kind of some context of what our breakouts were going to be about. And so you talked about, tweaking lessons to be more inclusive. I know you're big on like lifting student voice, and then also choosing resources that have different lenses, which you kind of talked about a little bit too. So of these shifts that I'm talking about and you coach on, what are some of the things that make the biggest difference for teachers, like right away? Like if they were to implement something or make a change in their classroom, which one of these would you advise them to start with?
Yes, one of the things that I always try to advise teachers on in mathematics, but this transcends any content, is the notice and wonders, those activities where everybody can be right. Which one doesn't belong? Which one is different? It is based upon your opinion. It's based upon how you see it. And you can't be wrong if you have a reason, right? It's not necessarily the reason that maybe I have as an educator, but it is your reason. So I always ask teachers, do students have a chance to own? Because that's the main thing that's missing a lot of times in our classroom. Like the person that's doing the talking, the person that's doing the summarizing, you own the learning, you own the teaching. When are students able to own their own opinion, their own access, their own entry, their own representation? So like a quick win is just asking, how can students be opinionated and also be right to support their opinion? When in the lesson did they do that? Because I think sometimes in our educational journey, we know like in mathematics, there is a correct answer. There is a solution, and we want to get there. Efficiency and accuracy is important, but also the journey is important. So I always ask teachers, where can our students not just win, but where can they own the lesson? And little access points, little strategy and instructional practices like that gives everybody a chance to win. And I'll say this, Josh, when students are not used to winning, when you ask them which one doesn't belong and it's based on their answer, they're going to be apprehensive about entering that, because they're going to be wondering, like, I'm so used to there being one right answer. I'm not used to being right. I'm not used to my opinion mattering, right? And so you're going to have to continue to consistently lift that up and to undo that mindset as if their opinion, their approach is not the correct approach because it's not the educator's approach. And so that's something that you're going to have to continually unravel with our kids.
So when you're working with specifically secondary teachers, because you had talked about a little bit about how second teachers need to go into the elementary space, right? And to see the fun and the joy and the exploration and maybe play also that's mixed in there that really is lost over time. And so how do you help teachers kind of change that mindset and then also get them to move toward like that deeper thinking, but also make it so it is a win and it's a safe space for our students?
I love that, because I get to get into more classrooms now and I get to visit with other people, and they're just like, if we don't want to be here, can you imagine what the students are feeling day in and day out? I'm a grown up and I get to leave, right? And so I offer the teachers, just like, would you want to, and I'm not saying their classroom, but if I'm your facilitator and I'm your quote unquote teacher, would you want to sit through this with me? Like, if there's no joy, if there's no laughter, if there's no connection, if there is nothing for it, like it's just a lecture. Imagine going back to college and sitting in those lecture halls and just being like nodding off because it's just so, like, you don't want to experience that. And so I try to highlight to teachers, like, what is the experience that you want to have? Because not only are your kids, it's about the kids. We center the kids, but you're a human being as well, and you want to enjoy what you're doing as well. So the reason why I want to bring joy in my classroom, because I want joy myself. The reason why I want to laugh and to have fun, because I like to have that in myself. And so when I think about coaching teachers, I ask them, where's the joy for them? And when your students are winning, ultimately you're going to win as well.
I love what you're talking about, James, and I felt this way in North Carolina too. Is just the joy piece, but also like having fun, having a safe space for kids. I remember math class, I was deathly afraid of getting called on because I didn't want to say the wrong answer, and I literally had anxiety before going into math class. And math, honestly, was one of my stronger subjects. Surprisingly, I wasn't good in school, but math kind of made sense to me. And so if I'm feeling that as someone that feels somewhat confident in his answers, then I can only imagine what a lot of our students are going through right now. And so, like, when you're coaching teachers, I know you are a brilliant teacher in that space. And so I'm just thinking, what are you advising them to help it out so that it's not such a hard subject for kids? But they also have that playfulness, that joy, and understanding if I get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. I can, try again.
Yeah. And that's good, because honestly, I had anxiety as well. I think I was built to believe that I had to be right. And there was just something about me in general. So my mom used to tell me, like, you just
I think we're cut from the same cloth, James.
So I already had that before there was a math class. And so when I realized, like, not only I could be right, then I could check myself for being right. Like, I was just like, man, this is the subject for me. Not only am I right, but I can prove that I'm right. Boy, I was in there. But when I think about kids and the experience of others, I used to, in my classroom, remind my kids, and I think sometimes just humanizing where kids are from. I used to, now I coach teachers to do a mathography for their kids, and they literally write down, like, when did they enjoy math? It could be something simple as putting first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade and happy face. It could just be smiley faces, like what happened. And not necessarily, don't give me the name of the teacher. Sometimes we're in the same building. I don't want you talking about that teacher or whatever like that. But you can just tell me, like, what happened? What was the interaction? Why did you stop loving math? So that you can get a gauge on where your kids are. So you know, like, what is it that they need again? And that those simple things, again, this is humanizing the person. This has nothing to do with the content per se, but it is necessarily, I can't get you the content if you hate the content, right? And so you hate the experience, you don't like the experience. I need to build a new experience for you. I used to give, and this is another strategy that I used to do, I used to literally give feedback surveys. I would ask my students how they felt about several things. First was my environment. Another thing I used to ask them based upon my teaching, what works best for them. I used to ask them questions like, do you feel like I treat students fairly? I say this because I'm a realist, Josh. You're going to have favorites. Stop with that, right? Like a kid shows up every day. They have their homework. They're engaging. When it's time for Christmas, they got a little gift for you. It's Teacher Appreciation Day. They got a little gift for you. You're going to favor them. Like we all have biases, but I don't want my kids to pick up on a way like I treat this person differently. So they would literally tell me like, hey, we noticed, and on the flip side, that child right there, when they start talking, they tend to get to you a little, they hit a little spot, Mr. O'Neill. You treat them a little differently. You look like you're triggered. And so, like humanizing the journey and asking kids, like, what can I do better? It's also a part of this journey of getting better because we're serving them.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Honestly, when I work with leaders, I consistently talk about student voice, right? Like, are you pulling them in other spaces? Do you have them presenting at staff meetings? Do you have them part of your committees? Do you have them like embedded in teacher interviews? Like the students are everywhere, right? It's going to affect them. So you should have their voice, and to your point, the ownership about it. How powerful is that to know that they have an influence in the classroom or an influence on the campus? Like we need to do a better job of finding ways to get that feedback and to see like if there's biases, not just in a math classroom, but maybe in the cafeteria, maybe in the hallways, maybe it's certain teachers. Like we got to know that as leadership. So I'm going to shift it to leader perspective as far as like, what do you think school leaders are, maybe it's a misconception, maybe misunderstanding about supporting math classrooms and instructional practices?
All right, Josh, you opened
I
it
opened it. I did.
So when it comes to leadership in the area of mathematics, you do not have to be a content expert to support effective teaching of mathematics. There is a underlying fear with leaders, many leaders, as it relates to mathematics, because they'll go into a classroom and I get it. You don't know what's going on, especially at the high school level. You're like, what? A limit? Piecewise functions? Like, what the heck? Like, what are y'all graphing, right? So it becomes it can become hands off because competence and competence is a need, right? In order for us to really lean into our competence, shout out to my boy Daryl who coined that for me. Like competence helps with confidence. And so if you don't feel competent in something, you will lack the confidence in addressing it. And so what I tell leaders is that it's important that, okay, you build a math team, you do find the teacher, the PLC leader, the math instructional coach. You can get outside help like myself, consultants that come in and come alongside you and tell and show you what to look for. Because the thing is, just because kids are talking in the classroom, they can be talking about a standard that is 2 grades beyond where they should be right now. Or they can be talking about a skill that they're in 8th grade and it's actually they're talking about a 6th grade skill because the teacher watered down the content because they didn't feel like the students would have access to it. So you as a leader walk in and be like, oh, there's a lot of turn and talk, but it ain't on standard. Right. And so you as a leader need, and this is one thing that I really try to help leaders support. When you're doing your walkthroughs, before you look for, you need to look at. And that's what I tell to leaders. Like before you got your checks for look fors, like what did you look at? Did you look at the standard? Did you look at the breakdown of what the actual lesson is called for? Did you look at the misconceptions that the student's going to have? Because you don't know what you're looking for if you never look at it, right? And you don't have to be the content expert in order to do that. You just need to know like what is the thing that kids are doing today, and then have a lens on how are they going to talk about it. Did the teacher do all the talking? When did the kids talk about the actual objective today? Where were the checks for understanding before the teacher moved on to the next thing? You can support that without knowing how to solve the equation to get the answer. So I try, and I'm gonna shut up right after this, Josh. I try to tell leaders, like, you have to go through your openness of math healing, because what you're afraid of, you will not address. And that's just the truth.
James, I don't want you to shut up, man. You got like brilliance inside of you that's pouring out, and I want more of it. So let's talk about some exciting news. And I want to celebrate you because you've got a new book coming out, and I'd love for my audience to hear what this resource is all about.
Yeah, so I am writing a book called The Engaged Classroom. Currently in the process of writing this book, and it's come along with the workshop that is really popular that I do, and I actually did that at NCMLE, motivating and supporting hard to reach students. And so many times I'm going in the classroom and I see a lack of engagement. And usually there's a lack of engagement because there's a lack of motivation. And when there's a lack of motivation, students don't know or have the buy-in, or there are cultures that usually are not being lifted up in the classroom. And so when I think about motivation, I usually attack it from the cultures or the needs, the psychological needs that students have that need to be met. And so I say that the students have a need of praise. There's a need of competence. There's a need of belonging, and there's a need of autonomy. When these things are embedded in the cultures of our classrooms, there's likely more engagement because there's likely more motivation. And so what does this look like carried out in elementary, middle, high school? What does it look like? Math, science, social studies, history, like ELA. What does it look like across the board? Because if these needs are not being met in the classroom, then when you ask your students to turn and talk, I hear teachers say they don't want talking to each other. They don't want to engage because they're not motivated. They don't know why the internal talk is not engaging. They don't feel competent. So if a student doesn't feel competent, what am I trying to talk about? The fact that I don't know what I'm talking about, And so again, competence is a need. Why would I turn and talk? I don't feel like I belong here. There is no sense of belonging in this classroom. And so I don't take ownership. Why would I, when you release me to do work, why would I do it on my own? I don't feel autonomous, right? There is no autonomy for me has been built up. And so the likelihood of me being motivated is going to be down. And therefore engagement is going to really, really, really be off. And so teachers are doing and asking kids to do a lot of things without ultimately meeting the needs and building these needs. And that's what the book currently is about, building the engaged classroom.
Awesome. Well, once it's released, James, you got to come back and we got to break it down and get into the book. Yeah, I'd love to have that conversation. So let's talk about your speaking too, because you do keynotes, breakouts, like you were talking about. So, if someone's looking to bring you in to help as far as Mastery for All, what is it that you offer?
Yeah. So outside of mathematics, again, I offer culture and mindset. So a lot of my business really centers the mindset needed to do the work. People underestimate the power of change minds.
Yeah, right.
And so a lot of the keynotes that I have is really around the mindset in our work and when that starts to changing. So engaging for all, really asking ourselves, can we be a door, ensuring that we are a door, giving kids access? What does it mean to teach math? And so a keynote and a workshop that I have called Make It Make Sense. A lot of people hate math because it doesn't make sense. I don't think a lot of people can like anything. I just love being confused, right? That's not a thing in life. So what does it look like for sense making, centering that, and just ultimately mastery for all, the message of equity and making sure that all of our kids have access and that there's the mindset and the practices behind that is things that I constantly am talking about.
Love it so much. All right. I asked this question of all, but James, based on our conversation, I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna change the question just slightly because I want to give some advice, some actionable items for our leaders. And it doesn't matter if they're a brand new aspiring leader or if they're a current leader right now. But what advice would you give leaders who want to build a school-wide culture where all students are seen as capable of mastery?
I would give this advice. One of the things that I knew that I started to do to change my classroom as a teacher before I stepped into leadership was those surveys. I think we don't really believe that our kids care about the environment in which they learn in. They don't have an opinion. They don't know what's best for them in some sense. I get it, it's an adolescent mind, but they don't have an opinion for that. When I started asking my kids what works, what is not working, they literally had suggestions for me. And I had a chance to hear what is the thing I need to build on and what is the strengths that I have. So, because this is working. And I say the same thing with leaders. Sometimes we ask teachers to do surveys and whatever like that, and we do nothing with that data. We don't address it. There is what we call our projects that we're going to do, what we're going to focus on for the year.
Right. Initiatives.
Like initiatives, we have them in writing, but they're not in practice. And so like you can't write and say that we're going to address this and never put it into practice. What are the accountable measures to make sure that we are addressing it and then making sure we're reviewing it throughout the year? That has to be the thing. And so I say, when you ask people, tell them that you've read it, show them that you've read it, and then show them what the plan of action is moving forward, so they will start believing in your ability to hear them and address and be solution-oriented people.
James, do you think there's a component of fear maybe of the answer or the fact that they actually need to make change based on the feedback?
Man, Josh, it is. When I show teachers, when I used to tell teachers that as a teacher, I would ask my kids, like, what is one thing that I can do to be better? They'd be like, I don't think I'm ready for that, James. I don't think I'm ready. Like, I don't think I'm ready. And I'm like, okay, let me walk you through it. So just ask them about the lesson today. Like those baby steps. It takes, Josh, with leadership, it takes emotional maturity and to hear that and I'm going to say this, you intend well. My intentions are good, but my impact is not aligning. It takes strong maturity to hear that and just be like, well, it's not about my intentions. It's ultimately about my impact. I need to change the way it's being impacted. And there's fear, there's confrontation into that. But if you're going to lead for people, you have to be open to that. And then get a therapist. You know what I'm saying? Like, go
Seriously.
talk to somebody. Right? You got to undo that stuff.
Yeah, that's important for anyone that's listening. I'm a huge believer in that, especially in leadership. As we all know, our cup is completely dry many times throughout the year. And so it's good to have a health professional that you're able to bounce stuff off of. James, I have been flashing your website throughout this conversation for those who are watching on YouTube, but I would love for you to direct them there, let them know what's, on the website, but then also how people can connect with you on social media, because I want everyone immediately to jump on their phone and connect with you.
Yeah. MrJamesO'Neil.com has videos. It has my podcast that I started. I don't have the longevity that you have in it, but it has resources. It has all my contact information. So anything about me is there. And then you can follow me. I'm heavily on TikTok, LinkedIn at Mr. James O'Neil. So just the way my name is spelled, that's the way you can look me up, is either MR and a period, or it's Mr. James O'Neil without the period between Mr. and James. So that's where you can find me.
That's awesome. Did we talk about your podcast? I don't remember talking about the podcast.
We did. And I said, I started, it's a lot of work,
Oh, that's right. Yes, I remember this now.
Yes.
So can you talk real quick? Because I want to direct folks to the podcast.
Yeah. So the podcast is Mastery for All. I started the podcast off with just my journey. And then I did a series called Is Math Racist? And it really goes into like why we have beliefs about who can access what. And it's just a brilliant series on just breaking down the practices of people and why we continually get the same outcomes over and over again. And so I'm not going to ruin what people said as far as the subject was really taboo. It's like, oh my God, can it be? What in the world? But it got people to lean in to just like, what are we doing? We expect the same thing over and over and over and over again. What is actually leading to that? So that was really cool.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out. So I'll make sure that the podcast link is in the show notes for folks, in addition to the website. We'll make sure all the social media links are in there also. So that way you guys can check out all the things that James is doing. You can also then learn more about his book, which is coming out sometime this year, hopefully soon.
Yes.
And then we'll make sure that, James, you're back on to talk about that resource. I'll make sure I have it in hand too, because I would love to share that out on social media too. So with that, thank you so much, James, for being the person who you are. You're so energetic, you're passionate, you have such great content out there, but then also sharing that with so many people across this country and changing in a great way the world of education.
I appreciate you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.